Drone sightings shut down the NATO country's biggest airport.
Why are you building aircraft carriers? The U.S. Army just announced a brand new huge tank, which is a sitting duck for the next generation of drones. Will make automatic killing machines in war much more likely. The key things you need for winning a war on a go-forward basis is you're going to need millions of drones.
Chairman, thank you for being here. So you have spent time in Ukraine on the ground. Tell us what impact AI and autonomy is having right now on the battlefield.
Well, first, Jean, thank you for doing this with us. You're so good at this, and I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I think the Ukraine war is a very good test bed to try to understand how AI will change war. And I'm not trying to minimize the horrific nature of the war. I've been in it. I've been on the front lines. Real wars are much worse than you all think they are if you've not been in them. It's really horrific. I think there's a couple of principles that I would offer. The first is that there's no place to hide, that modern sensors see everything. So, for example, if you're on the front, which is a horrible place to be, you can only come in and out of your foxholes at dawn and dusk every 12 hours, because those are the only times when you can move without being detected by the daytime cameras or the infrared nighttime cameras. And the infrared cameras are getting so good now that the visibility at night is very similar to what you need for the day. I mean, it's astounding. So if there's no place to hide, then why are you building aircraft carriers? The U.S. Army just announced a brand new huge tank, which is a sitting duck for the next generation of drones. And by the time the tank is deployed, the drones will be incredibly powerful. You have the same principle with aircraft carriers and so forth. It's my own view is that the fastest learner wins. What's happening on Ukraine's side is that they're outnumbered 3 or 4 to 1, and Ukraine is moving very, very quickly to innovate ahead of the Russians. The Russians are good, but the Ukrainians are better. And that's why the fight is kind of balanced right now. It's not a stalemate, it's a tough fight, but Russia has not been able to achieve her objectives, which in my view is very good. You know, if you go back to all of this hardware, when you go to the actual front, there's nothing on it. They don't have tanks or armored personnel carriers. All those things that are sitting in warehouses, you can't use them, they're too dangerous to be in. And I think what's going to happen is that the autonomy aspects will make automatic killing machines in war much more likely. And I'm not talking about the robots that you see in movies. I'm talking about the equivalent of drones, whether they're sea drones or air drones, that are highly automated with highly automated kill chains. And I think the final observation, sorry to go on, is that this is integrated in an AI software framework using reinforcement learning, and that integrated software framework with reinforcement learning means that you can have optimal battle plans. My observation of militaries, having spent lots of time with them, is they have thousands of people who consider themselves planners. Why do we need planners when we can have the computer do a better plan than humans can? The planners can obviously oversee what the computer is doing, but computers are going to be better at planning and vision and, frankly, killing.
It sounded to me when you mentioned the aircraft carrier that you thought that was not the right place to be spending our money. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the argument in favor of aircraft carriers is force projection in faraway Pacific fleets, which is absolutely needed. What do you need on an aircraft carrier? Now, let's think about it. Why do you need a fighter jet on an aircraft carrier? Don't you really need a boat that has a whole bunch of automated drones, which look a lot like jets, by the way, that get close enough for the range to hit whatever their targets are? So if you think about the Taiwan scenario, which is what the American military is mostly spending their time on, you need to get those drones close enough to do the various military tactics that the military wishes to do. But why would you put 5,000 humans in the path of a Chinese or Russian missile? Because we don't have very good defenses against those missiles. So just the whole concept of war should change. Bob Work and I wrote an article called Offset X, which is a derivative of his third offset work, where we basically said that the digital transformation and autonomy were fundamentally going to call in question the need for all of these things. The reason I'm having fun with aircraft carriers is one aircraft carrier is like $18 billion, and we build one every 5 years or so. I just don't see why we need them. Now, they look good and they look very powerful. I'd much rather have a network of defensive systems that are so powerful that no one can attack America.
Let me push back just a little. Was talking to a general from Eastern Europe who was talking about the emphasis on drones, and he said, wait a minute, sooner or later, counter-drone technology is going to get so good that drones will no longer have the kind of effect they're having right now. We have to keep investing in those big legacy systems. What would your response be to him?
Everything he said is correct except the last sentence. Because remember, the anti-drones will be so powerful they can be used against aircraft carriers. And a swarm, the aircraft carriers are not ready to defend against large-scale drone or anti-drone attacks. One of the things about anti-drones is that they themselves are powerful drones. And we're beginning to see in Ukraine, basically Shahed killers can also be used for ground-to-ground. So I think it's a fair bet that in the next year or so, the ability to launch something from land to far distant targets with very high targeting is going to eliminate most other forms of weapons. If you think about it, artillery makes no sense, mortars make no sense, and tanks make no sense. I'm going to assert that large ships with lots of people on them make no sense. I'm going to assert that humans in airplanes make no sense. Now, integrated air defense is really important, but it's going to be automated. And what I've learned, again, I'm an amateur, we have a lot of people in the audience who are professionals. If I make a mistake, I apologize. My observation is that control of the skies is a presumption of American exceptionalism. There is a presumption that we can control the skies. And I'll tell you that Ukraine started without an air force. And so it was forced, right, literally forced to build a drone air defense system. And the other observation I would make is that we don't understand the game theory dynamics of these things. But the way to understand war is that this would never happen, but I hit you, you hit me back, and then my next choice is whether I escalate. We don't understand what those ladders are in the drone world because we've never had any experience with it.
This week on NatSec Tech, to put in a little bit of a plug here, we had Steve Bauscher, who is the CEO of In-Q-Tel. He said one of their top priorities right now is working with drone swarms and getting them to coordinate and collaborate. Talk to me a little bit about that, if you would.
Another thing I learned was that in this future, reliable communications are going to be very important. I did not know that the Russians have the strongest and best electronic warfare systems, offensive in the world. I also did not know that American weapons generally fail against them. Shame on us. We don't even have good ways of testing the Russian systems with our own, to test, like the military contractor can't really test. And so if you look, for example, at the HIMARS, they were initially effective, and then the Russians found ways to jam them. I was watching a particular operation, and I actually saw a number of American weapons going against a tank, and they would get close, they would have target lock, and then something happened, and the tank had some way of emitting a signal that confused the American weapon that would have been supplied to the Ukrainians. So I know this to be true. It looks to me, now this is Eric's opinion, that both sides have figured out how to get through each other's EW. And so it looks like we're not going to be able to block the signal transmission of our enemy, right? And the way they do this technically is using various forms of spectrum, Wi-Fi, other kinds of signals. There's evidence that large jamming systems work, but the large jammers are the size of trucks and they're not very mobile. And so that's why I think it's likely that you will be able to communicate with your 100,000 drone swarms, and it will not be possible for the enemy to stop that. And that allows you to project a great deal of power. So one of the things that I'm worried about, and I'm sorry to be such a downer for you all, is that if you think about, neither side can deter each other's with stopping communications. So that means in order to win, you need more kinetics, that is more mass. So a reasonable prediction is that the mass of drones, that is literally the amount of TNT and C4 that they have on them, or whatever you are carrying, is going to go up exponentially. Which tells you, for example, that if you're in the business of making C4 or TNT, you probably have a good business going forward.
When it comes to coordination and collaboration amongst the drones, though, that's key, isn't it? Because no human operator is going to be able to keep track of 100 or maybe 1,000 drones in the air at one time.
So I was present when AlphaGo won the first Korean championship against the human, and I was literally in Korea. And there was a famous move called Move 37, and Go has been a game that's been played for 2,500 years, which made no sense. And I was with the room with the humans, and the human says, proof that the game is going to lose, the computer is going to lose to humans, because no human would make such a stupid mistake. When they reverse engineered the algorithm, the computer had discovered a new move. And this was the first example that I'm aware of in a gaming context of a completely new strategy being invented that was not visible to humans who were real experts in it. So I'm of the opinion that if you have 100 humans who are busy controlling all the drones, and these are smart people and they're well-trained and so forth, my computer using reinforcement algorithms can actually come up with moves that you cannot anticipate, and I can beat you. That is my opinion. So my guess is that the key things you need for winning a war on a go-forward basis is you're going to need millions of drones of many different kinds, by the way, not, you think of one type drone, different sizes and power, that the algorithms will run in simulation and they'll learn what combinations to do based on what the enemy is doing. And the battle will occur very quickly. So the enemy comes in with a particular force projection, and the computer says, the optimal winning algorithm is to do A, B, and C. The humans will watch this and go, holy crap, look at what it just did. And this is equivalent of sacrificing your queen in chess. But as a mathematical ability, the goal in war is to increase the probability of winning from 50-50, say, all the way up to 100%. We know how to do that algorithmically.
We've talked a lot about Ukraine. Talk to me about China. You've visited there too as well. What are you seeing them do in terms of AI and economy that raises concerns or interest?
Well, it's interesting. I was just there. I visited a whole bunch of robotic factories, and I'm sorry to upset people in Texas. It sure looks to me like China is going to dominate the low-end robotic space. They're driving the cost of humanoid and non-humanoid robots down to thousands of dollars from $10,000, $20,000. Their hardware, which is derived from their electronic vehicle work, is extraordinary. We in America don't have access to the Chinese EV cars, but they're phenomenally good at it, and they're getting better and better, and they're doing it the Chinese way, which means at scale. So my conclusion was that the ideal scenario is Chinese hardware and American software, which is geopolitically not possible, but that's the way I would phrase it. On the AI side, and I've written publicly about this, it sure looks to me like China is pursuing a different strategy than the US. The US is, and I'm very excited about this, working toward general intelligence. If you look at the planning gains and the incredible look at whether it's the latest 2.5 Gemini, OpenAI's successor to O3, It just goes on and on. Look at the coding capabilities of Claude. It's unbelievable what they're doing. That, and by the way, that's at huge cost, right? Hundreds of billions of dollars of capital. You know the story about we're running out of electricity. We need, God knows, I testified in Congress, 92 gigawatts more power. An average nuclear power plant is 1.5 gigawatts. You see the problem. China has all the power that it needs. It's built the infrastructure, by the way, using solar largely. And they have all the power they need. They don't have the chips because of chips reserves. And they also don't have the depth of the financial markets to fund $50 billion worth of hardware, at least today. It looks to me like because of all of those factors, they're going to focus on consumer products and enterprise applications for the rest of the world. I don't think that America will allow those things in. There's a pretty good chance that Chinese software is going to power the majority of the world's, human interfaces with computers and business interfaces. That's of concern. I think it's very important that U.S. technology dominate all of the spaces. I want America to win, and I think we need to win in all of those. I think we're not spending enough time on the more mundane stuff. We're spending a good amount of time on the exciting stuff, which is great. We need to spend more time on the mundane stuff as well.
I'm sure there wasn't a lot of transparency, but I'm wondering if you were able to glean anything about how China might be militarily applying AI and autonomy.
There's no hint at all. The people I was with were not military. The Chinese military does not welcome me to chat with them. I always, when I visit a Chinese company, I always believe, because of civil-military fusion, I'm in one building, and I always believe in my mind that there's another building next door, which I'm not allowed into, where they do all the military work. So remember, in their model, the companies, the national champions, do both military and civil stuff together, presumably in different buildings with different classification. So you have to assume that every product that I see, which includes, by the way, the robotic stuff, there's a military division as well. I did not see them.
So if this is the future of warfare, as most of our participants here today agree that it is, and if China and Russia are moving ahead, is the U.S. meeting the moment?
Well, the U.S. is at the moment well behind in the areas that I'm speaking about. The Secretary of Defense has issued a very important and positive order to get organized around drones. The U.S. spends, I think it's $1 trillion a year, roughly, in military national security spending. It's on that order. So there's plenty of money in the system. One way to understand the U.S. military is, and thank God we're at peace, is it's sort of a job subsidy program for existing industries. If we're really at war, which hopefully never will occur, if we're really at war, I think you would see our military change very, very quickly. We have plenty of U.S. companies that understand what I'm talking about, many of which are in the room, and they have trouble getting big contracts because that's not how the primes work. The U.S. military does not have very good software capabilities compared to their hardware capabilities. The procurement systems are not organized around these. So again, if it were possible, I would accelerate this transition to Offset X, autonomy, and drones. I see no reason why America should give an inch. I want us to, the phrase is, we bow to no one, right? America's dominance in the world is very important to American exceptionalism, to American economy, to freedom. I think America is committed to fighting against tyranny. That's why we fought in World War II. I'm a strong supporter of all of this. I worry that we're still spending 99.9% of the money on stuff that's not very important. Another example, for the last 15 years that I've worked on this, when you have a person with a rifle in the enemy, they typically use a missile from a jet to kill that person. That doesn't make any sense. In the initial war in Ukraine, before the Ukrainians had what they have now, they would use $1 million S-300, S-400 missiles to shoot down Shaheds, which cost about $27,000 at the time. Again, the math doesn't work. It's really important in this new world to have defensive systems, which are, by the way, dual use, that you can mass produce at scale. What I'd like to see in America is a commitment to large manufacturing capabilities in the United States with stockpiled parts. I was talking to some of my general friends, and they pointed out that in the China conflict, which again, we hope will never occur, we're going to also want to have those kinds of factories in the Philippines, Japan, Korea, our allies as well, because of the tyranny of distance, which makes sense to me. It's a complete rethink of this.
Do you think it's underway?
As is usual with our military, there are some very smart people who I've met with who understand this, but I don't judge the military by what they say. I judge where the budget goes, and the budget is still going to legacy systems.
Speed isn't just important when it comes to acquiring these systems and deploying them. As you've mentioned, in Ukraine, one of the lessons learned is the learning and the re-engineering and new iterations of technology. There seems to be a cycle that operates very, very quickly. Does the US military have anything comparable to that?
It does not. There is a very good group in the Army I think it's Wiesbaden, in Germany, that really does understand all of this, but the big Army, whatever you want to call them, is not operating on that cycle. In Ukraine, the innovation cycle on either side is about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks before one side copies what the other one does. It's horrible. And the Ukrainian drone companies and software teams work 24 hours a day. So if you have a simple one is using Shaheds because everyone's talking about them. The Shahed 136ers come in and the Ukrainians can now shoot them down, and they use various techniques. The Russians are aware of this, so they change their tactics. So you can watch on the radar tracks, they're taking evasive maneuvers. Well, every time the Russians make a change in the Shahed, overnight the Ukrainians make a software change to anticipate it. So that's how real war is fought. Now, everything I'm saying may be fine because America's not at war. And so I'm not trying to say that this is, it's not some existential crisis. America is strong. We have plenty of money. We have plenty of smart people, including the people in the rooms. It just seems like a waste of money to be working on the wrong things. I don't want us to be at war in order to learn these lessons. America also does not have troops, by agreement, I think, in Ukraine. So you don't have active duty people who are watching the Ukrainians do this. These are, again, the Americans are very smart. They're reading about it. But having been there, the visceral reaction of watching this go on is profound. And part of my message here is, until you go there and see it, you won't understand how both brutal and iterative it is. In my career, which is almost 50 years in tech, I'm used to highly competitive markets. Real war is even more than the competitions that I've been through in my many years in competing with my friendly competitors.
We have an audience here, and I'd love to solicit some questions from some of you who are expert in the field. We have a couple of people with microphones. If anybody wants to be brave and put up their hands, here's your opportunity to talk to Eric Schmidt. Oh,
Thank
we
you.
have one here.
My name is Hasib Abdullah, resident here in Austin. The question I have, Mr. Schmidt, is there's only a couple of 5, 6 major primes. Breaking them up, do you think that would be at least a first start to innovation and also cheaper weapon systems? Thank you.
A lot of people have talked about this. The way the primes got, they're really sort of 3 primes. And the way the primes got there is, I'll just bluntly say, regulatory capture. What happened was the government got comfortable with a set of companies. The companies got comfortable with the government. And a whole procedure which involves writing specs, the government writes them, the companies build them, they compete, and then they award to one, and then each of the others sues the other. That delays everything by 2 years. Then eventually they start building something which, in my view, by then is obsolete, then it takes forever, and then there's another lawsuit and so forth. It's a bad model. So I think breaking up is not the right answer. The right answer is to understand rapid development. I had suggested, for example, when I worked for the Secretary of Defense for a long time, I had suggested that the right way to do this was to actually work directly with the companies to iterate, because that's the way you build products is you talk to your customer, that was a bad idea, this is a good idea, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand something, so forth and so on. And the answer was, it's a great idea, Eric, but it's illegal. I visited something called a KAOC some years ago during the Iraq War, and it's a classified airplane control system. And I made some suggestions, technical suggestions, because of my own background, and I built some of the software that they were using, which tells you how old it was, way, way back when. And they said, those are great ideas, but it's illegal to bring in a new computer into this building. I said, all right. So the system is organized for stasis, not innovation. And that's a hard problem. It has to be really rethought. I talked to, again, some of my general friends who said, don't worry. In a real war, we're going to ignore all these rules and we're going to do the right thing. And I said, great. Okay. We don't want to have a real war.
Do we have another question out there? I see a hand up over here.
Hey, Eric, it's Craig Martell, former CDAO, but now CTO at Lockheed Martin. So speaking for the primes,
Hi.
I actually think we agree exactly with your statement that being able to be iterative with the customer would radically change the way we build things. We feel our hands tied equally as much as I think the rest of you do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've actually worked with Lockheed, and as you know, I'm good friends with your CEO. And what's interesting is that when I sit down with your teams and you actually talk to the engineers and you said, why did you do this? And the engineer said, we were ordered to, by someone who had no idea what they were doing. It's a terrible system.
Nice to have a contrary viewpoint here. I'm so glad you were here. We have a couple of questions over here.
Thank you for your time today, sir. Jason Ballard, CEO of a tech company here in Austin. I'm going to get the quote wrong a little bit, but something like weapons win battles and logistics wins wars. And of course, the weapons often get a lot of the attention, the drones, the electronic warfare. But I wonder if you have any commentary or thoughts about what we're learning about logistics and infrastructure and how that's changing in the recent contexts.
You know, I've been told that for like 15 years, and everyone believes it. I'm not really sure if that's true. Partly because I'm a scientist, you can't prove it. You know, it's a belief. But when I look at Ukraine, they've tried very hard to destroy the back-end infrastructure, and the war continues. So it sure looks to me like you have to solve everything at once. I understand the argument that weapons build back. I understand the argument. Weapons for a battle, logistics for the war. A better metric is you have to have a plan to win, which involves solving both problems at scale simultaneously for a long time. And I think that's a more accurate description of that. I think what happens is that the infrastructure people generally feel that they don't get any attention. And so this is their self-validation. Maybe that's false, but that's an opinion. And you need infrastructure. I'll give you an example. In the current battles on the Ukrainian side, I can't speak for the Russians, obviously, the humans are still too forward on the front. So how many humans do you need? Well, because of connectivity, the entire war can be run from a different city like Kyiv, and I've seen this done. But somebody's got to put the drones in the front, right? So the logic there means you have longer and longer and farther range drones. I used to be able to go to the front within 5 or 10 kilometers, and now that would be suicide. Today the answer is 50 kilometers. So what happens is that in drone war anyway, the distances increase as a function of the supply line of where the drone launches from. And the current tactics are limited by batteries, high-powered batteries, battery ranges, The gasoline engines on drones are more powerful. They have longer ranges. They're also louder. They're easier to shoot down. They're easier to see on a radar. They're easier to see with infrared. If you look at the FPV fiber drones, FPV, everybody knows, is the tiny little drones, and the Russians have had great success with fiber optics. Those things now have 30 kilometers of fiber on them. It's insane. So I think the doctrine says that you move people away from the front in the war. This is a land wars. You increase that distance. You still got to get your drones there. How are you going to do it? And I think that's going to be the next kind of innovation.
I think another question back here, quickly.
Hi, my name is Ananya Krishna. I'm a senior at Yale studying applied math and machine learning. And I'm curious to know, with all the recent advances in adversarial AI with technologies like evasion or misclassification-based attacks, do you think that this technology could be a fast or scalable solution to threats posed by autonomous systems?
So there's been a lot of work on it. So an excellent question. And I look forward to hiring you in one of my companies. The adversarial system, at the moment, adversarial attacks are largely theoretical. There have not been significant adversarial attacks. We should expect adversarial attacks because we should expect a rapid increase of cyber war. And the reason we should expect a rapid increase of cyber war is we're seeing a rapid increase of automatic software development. And automatic software development is identical to building cyber attacks using computers. It's the same technology. So in my little world of people who talk about this, we collectively believe that there will be an explosion in cyber attacks. And an obvious cyber attack is what you're describing. And so all of the companies that I know are very worried about this from a physical security and a cryptographic security. And I think you're correct that this will occur. I'm waiting to see a big one happen, and that will be illustrative.
Dr. Schmidt, we're just about out of time, but I want to give you a chance to compose a message for national security leaders on this issue of AI and autonomy. What is the one thing you want them to really grasp?
Well, you know, our military, these are real heroes. I love working with them. And they have a doctrine of fight tonight. They have enormous courage, much greater courage than I do. We do not have the tools and the systems that they need. We are failing our leaders. People in this room, part of the reason we're having this meeting is because collectively, I think we all kind of agree with this in philosophy. And so America's strength is innovation. So why are we not applying the same principles of innovation that are in the consumer sector to the military? And it's because of the procurement systems, right? The average time to weapon system is something like 17 years now, right? By then the thing is obsolete. I can't remember which of the jets it is, but it has like a Pentium 4 processor in it, and it's still programming. When I was flying, when I was in the Pentagon, I discovered a Burroughs 6600 deep in the bowels somewhere that people were afraid to turn off, right? The programmers who wrote that are literally dead, right? So come on, guys, we can do better than this. And so this part of the conversation, part of what you're trying to do, Gene, is to get everyone to talk about this. It seems to me that the way America changes is either from a crisis, which we do not want because it's war, or because we collectively agree that we want to win in a new space. And for all of you, there's enormous revenue here. Now you have this explosion in fantastic startups. And I want them to get through the valley of the death. I want the government to have a way of working with them. I want them to know who to call. The thought experiment that I used to give is, let's imagine that I collect all the venture capitalists in the Bay Area in a room for a military procurement venture conversation. Who from the government is going to come and present to them, and what is he or she going to say, right? If you can't answer that question, right, then you're not going to win. Now, our venture capital community loves to talk to CEOs, and they imagine who the customer are, but this is a single source customer, right? For good reason, by the way. We don't want separate militaries. The military has got to learn how to work with us, and of course, they're very law-abiding. The laws have to change to allow for this, and I'm excited for that to occur. I'd like it to occur during my lifetime.
Dr. Eric Schmidt, Chairman of SCSP, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
all. Thank you, Jeannie, and I'll talk to you soon.